So a little bit about myself. What do? I teach people how to be bulletproof, or not quite, okay? That's Bulletproof CEO is a specific program we run. Other stuff is about mental health and conflict. And the other one on there has to do with how do we connect and how do we build relationships at work. So my whole life had prepared me basically for this, from a kid in South Africa and the conflicts and stuff I saw there, all the way through to the military, where I was in the special forces, and you saw all kinds of weird stuff. Everywhere I ran into conflict in my life, and I looked at how do we make sure that we can connect through that and still be able to function properly. Are you okay there, sir? You want to turn it up? It's a little bit quiet, so if I speak louder, it's better. So keep on waving at me and I'll keep on speaking louder, it's fine. Yes, like that. And if we can get a whole wave going at the back, it's even better. Okay, there we are. Okay, now I feel like I'm standing on the market in Amsterdam, sort of like, hey, twee voor een dubbeltje, sort of thing, okay? You guys know what a dubbeltje is? Stuiver? Oh, we have to educate you first. Okay, so when I came to the Netherlands in the early 2000s, every coin and every note had a different name. So stuiver is the name for a 5-cent coin. Okay, a dubbeltje is twice that. All right, and then we had things like 2.5. And we go like, that was a daalder, if I remember correctly, or a rijksdaalder. And then we had a geeltje, which was yellow, originally in color, but then changed color somewhere along the line, and everybody still called it a geeltje. And you had like a 50, I think that was called a mayor. And then we go like, which mayor in Amsterdam are going to bribe with 50, But it actually referred to de mayor. Do you know what that is? It's a very Amsterdam's word for a sex worker. And for a very long time, that was the price for sex workers in Amsterdam, right? So it's weird how the culture connects to the language, connects to the activities in a country. And so we also have that, we see that in leadership. By the way, this is some of the TED Talks and stuff I've done and some of the courses I've given at the university. This past week we worked with the university looking at how do we use conflict resolution in interviews so that when you're doing an interview, you can be more emotionally stable and in the moment so that you can focus on giving the best possible answers you can. So I'm going to teach you one or two of those tricks today as well. All right. So, Dutch culture is weird. Okay? If you agree with me, just put up your hand. All right? If you don't agree with me, put up your hand. Okay. If you can't make up your mind, put up both hands. Okay, all right. I'm going to tell you why it's weird. Okay. So, the thing about Dutch culture is that, for instance, let's see, who comes from the Far East? Anywhere sort of like from Arabia all the way through to Japan? Okay. Yeah, you're sort of Eastern Europe. It's not quite the same. No. Okay. Right. Who comes from Europe, including Eastern Europe, just sort of shy of Russia, sort of thing? All right. Okay. Who comes from South America? Right. And Africa? Ah, there's my African brothers and sisters. Fantastic. Okay. And then what's left? North America? I'm so sorry if you're weak. All right. Culturally, I think it must be really tough. All right. And I don't want to know about the culture too much today. We'll focus on the Dutch one. It's fine. So why is Dutch culture weird? When we go to Africa, it's about relationships. Because for the longest time, Africa has not really had that many stable regimes, so you need to trust the people more than the law. The same thing in the East. If you go to China, for instance, it's a massive country. So whoever is locally to you, the local person in politics or the local person who's going to look after you legally, it's the relationships that's going to save you because the power is very far away from you. So those kind of cultures are based on relationships. We see that in India as well, massively around relationships, around family. The Dutch, however, were the first ones to start off things like a stock exchange, had the first listed company, the VOC. So everything here works around the law. And the law starts with one basic principle. I own something. So what I own, you cannot take away from me, because if you do that, it's theft. Or murder, depends on where you want to take away, you know? We just hope we never get to that point. So that also means I own my opinion. I have a right to my opinion. And you can't take my opinion away from me. So when we are in a Dutch work environment, you need to give people the opportunity to share their opinion, because otherwise you're taking it away. So the flip side has started happening. When you do not share your opinion, how can we trust you? Because you're withholding. You're keeping things to yourself that could have helped us further. So that's why you will see in a lot of these Dutch companies, when they ask you to speak up, they mean it. In other countries, you're allowed to have an opinion. In the Netherlands, you're required to have an opinion, even if you know nothing about it. Right? So I'm going to ask you about, how do we drill holes in Africa for water? And you go like, you know what? I think what you should do is, and I know nothing about it, but I'll give you the value of my opinion, and then people can go like, okay, and next, and next, and next, and you'll see a lot of people will just go as well, same as him. They'll just go, and I also think, and they'll add to it. And the idea behind it is that the Dutch culture is that you are allowed to be you, but that also there's a responsibility attached to that. So when we give you something to do, you don't just go run off and go do it. The first thing you do is reflect for a moment and figure out if you can do it. If you have doubts about it, say, I would like some help with, or can you help me to understand precisely what you want? Because if you rush off and go do the best you can, which tends to happen in the UK a lot, people go like, you know what, I'm just going to go do everything. The boss just asked me, I'm going to go do it, I'm going to do it, yes, 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 and then come back and here you go. And they go, that's not what I asked for. Like, so, okay, I'll go do it again. You come back and say, still not what I asked for. And I think in the Netherlands it's quite nice. You can actually say, so what do you want? All right? It's okay. Because if I give you a task and you go execute it to your best of your ability and it's still not good enough, wouldn't it have been handy beforehand to know who can help you to make it better? And so the trust is that you will do it well. The focus is on the outcome, not on the process. You work 20 hours a day, I don't care. You work 2, I still don't care. Is the job done? And if the job is done, we can make money with it, we can do whatever we want with the outcome, but without the outcome, we have nothing. So if you want to get promoted because you work hard, probably not going to happen. If you want to get promoted because you do good delivery of stuff, may happen, but you may be too valuable in that position. So ask, what do I have to do to get promoted? What do I have to do? What do I have to learn? What do I have to show? Ask. Because your manager is used to having an opinion, and he will give you the benefit of that opinion, or she, if you give them the opportunity. You may not want to hear it, but they will give you that opinion. Right. And if you don't know what to do with that opinion, there's a lovely book called Thanks for the Feedback, written by Douglas Stern and Sheila Heen. It's probably the best book on feedback in the world. It will change your life because it's not about how to give feedback, but how to take it and what to do with it. All right. So, yes, Dutch culture is weird. When it comes to opinions, we just talked about that. So this is Dutch cows that have opinions. Who are my friends that are up from Leeuwarden with somebody? Yes. Okay. You know them, right? There's quite a few around you, I think. Yeah. Love them. They're great. Just get a statue, put it in your garden. It looks really interesting. Right. Opinions we talked about. Now, let's look at the FBI. Okay, so we're going to go to North America. So, you guys know what a slug says on the back of a turtle? It's written up there. It says, wee! Really nice and fast. Sort of, all right. And that's what we're going to talk about. W-H-E-E. What, how, and extract the essence and the emotions. So no matter what the conversation you're in, so who absolutely adores their mother-in-law? Okay. Yeah, sounds right. Perfect. Okay, so this is what stuff you're going to practice on your mother-in-law or that manager you don't like, or you're going to be sitting at a bar and you have to feign interest in someone. You know, those kind of conversations where you don't really want to engage, but you can't get away from it, and you just need to figure out what the hell to say to not make a faux pas. Use this. This is what the FBI uses. Specifically, the book you can read around this is called Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. It's about what the FBI uses in hostage negotiation to build rapport with hostage takers, and they only have a telephone line or a radio to work with. So because they have limited resources and limited communication, they can't read the body language. So we need to get it all into words. So why this works really well is if you're like me, worked in IT, you know there's a hint of autism in IT, all right, or in engineering, which means you need to get the information out of people because you don't necessarily read the emotions of the body language very well. So this is a nice little trick we also use with people with autism or people with aphasia, try and get that information out. You know, guys know what aphantasia is? It's about 3%, 4% of the population suffer from it. You can't visualize things. Okay, so your memory works different than the rest. So it's great to get the information out of people, get into words, something you can put into a different format that works for you. Okay, Russell, can you hear me at the back? Okay, good. Just to make sure that I haven't sort of like gone a little bit too low in my volume. It's quite noisy, so I need to just go like this, and then I'll increase the volume. Okay. Oh, there we go. Volume is up. All right. I just feel like I'm screaming at the people in the front, you know. Are you guys okay? All right. Thank goodness for that. So, what does this mean? That means we ask open-ended questions. We've all learned about active listening, right? And active listening, you're going to ask open-ended questions, and we're going to summarize what the person tells us. Yeah, sure. But there are questions that are confrontational. Why is asking you to be judgmental about something, or you are showing judgment of something? We don't want that. We also don't want to add a time limit to it. So when are you going to do this? Because again, it's asking the person to give a commitment. We want to leave it a little bit more free and open. So, and we don't want it to be a hot inquiry. So the things we ask is what and how questions. What is happening here? How did this come about? How can we solve this? What would be the next steps? Those kind of things. What are you struggling with? How can I help you? Non-confrontational questions. The questions we don't ask is, what the hell do you think you were doing? Okay? That's a little bit confrontational. All right. So the next one is, what do we do with that information? Summarize. Yeah, what are you going to give me, a paragraph? 2 pages? I mean, how far are you going to go with this summary? The lovely thing about essence is when we take the essence out of a conversation, the Dutch call it a rode draad. When we get that out of a conversation, we take the essence of that conversation and we reflect it back. So if I understand you correctly, your mother-in-law and you don't get along at all. All right. But then what about the emotion? If I understand you correctly, you and your mother-in-law don't get along, and it makes you sad. It makes you angry. It makes you frustrated. Or you feel frustrated. So what happens between men and women? Men and women are a little bit different in the way that they approach this. You give somebody the essence back and the emotion back, and women will gravitate towards the emotional side and telling you you've got it wrong. If you got it wrong, if you got it right, they'll get back to the data, or basically the essence bit. Men will tell you all the stuff that you've gotten wrong in the logical side, the essence side. Right. Both will eventually help you along the way to get both the essence and the emotion right. So if somebody says, you're right, we know that they don't mean it, because you're right is also a way to say, please leave me alone. All right? That's right is what we're looking for. Okay? Or I see you get it, or something like that. Something that's a little bit more along that line. So these are the kind of things we normally practice. Next thing has to do with, what are the CIA going to do? Well, the CIA teaches it's something they used till about 2010. They've now moved on to more to rascals. You guys know Cialdini? Have you ever heard of him? Behavioral economics? Okay. The stuff that marketeers use to try and trick you into buying stuff. All right? The emotional side of that. Now, The CIA had something called RICE, or MICE. And RICE is about reason first. So we're trying to use logic. But we know that people will use logic to filter stuff, but they don't make their decisions with reasoning. Ideology. What do I believe in? Let's look at what happened in the US. There's a lot of belief that helped people to make decisions. There wasn't necessarily logic involved in that. Okay. C, coercion. When I put a gun to your head and I go like, do it or else. Or in the UK, the boss might say something like, I wouldn't do that if I were you. Which is usually, you're fired if you do. In the Netherlands, you'll get the answer back, thank you for your opinion, but you're not me. Okay. So, and E has to do with ego, or the way that I look at myself, or the way that I feel about myself. But what is the order? What is the most important parts in this? Oh, there on the left-hand side, sorry. No, my left, your right. Ideology first. We will subvert who we are and what we think about ourselves to what we believe in and what we believe is our place in the world. We do that with religion, we do that with politics, we do that with football. I mean, we saw that this past week as well, you know? So we will believe, when we believe in something, we will put ourselves second. Do we believe in our marriage? Do we believe in our job? Do we believe in our fellow man, in our teammates, in our manager? Or don't we? And when we don't, then the self-importance comes to the fore. So if you want to convince somebody of anything, you need to understand their ideology. You need to understand what do they believe in. And what do we do to do that? We ask what and how questions, look for the essence, find out the emotions, because we know what's going to resonate with them. Simple question. Thinking about politics in the world at the moment, how do you feel about that? Got a how question in there. What would you change? Do you know what a big question you've just asked that person? You're starting to get a whole idea of what they believe in the world. How many children do you have? What would you say is the biggest tip for raising children? I'm looking to be promoted within the next 2 years. How should I go about that? What can I do? How can you help me? All right? And once we figure that out, is that a belief system of theirs? So for instance, you'll figure out that some men or some women in the Netherlands will have rather racist or sexist or xenophobic beliefs. They might not even be aware of it. Because in the Netherlands, everybody's allowed to have an opinion, so if you have an opinion that's a bit racist and everything else, you're still allowed to voice it, and then somebody's going to tell you, that was a bit hurtful. You go like, didn't try to hurt you. And that's where we need to understand that there's a difference between the what and the whom. What people say is different from who they are. They may make mistakes in what they say, but that doesn't make them a bad person. And our what and how questions can help us to show them that maybe that was hurtful or not something I would like to experience. And if you ask somebody saying, listen, by the way, I found that hurtful, I found that upsetting, or I didn't like that, and you give them an alternative, they will happily do it. If you're constantly saying, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like this, it's a case of nobody's going to talk to you because not every time they talk to you, it is just too bloody difficult. If you say, I don't like this, would you mind doing it in a different way? 9 times out of 10 people are going to be very happy with that because you've given them what? The power of your opinion. And you're allowed your opinion, not just allowed, you're required to have an opinion, you're required to share that. Okay. And then we have reason. So most often people will filter with reason and then go back to the other two to make a decision. So what do we do in a work environment? When we send an email, we use reason. The first thing is, hi, John, Mary, Susan. Next line, depending on your culture, that's going to be something in which you're going to say, hi, how is your day today? They won't be able to answer, it's an email. Okay? We also don't do that on WhatsApp. If you're my age or older, people still do, but okay, you know what it's like. The next three things you say is, or next thing you say is, what do you want? What do you want from me? Very simple. Could you please make a decision? Or could you make sure that one of the following three things happen? Could you make a decision on the three things below and do it preferably by Tuesday? So now, in the very first line, I know what you want from me and I know when you need it by. The next three lines is option 1, option 2, option 3. Put the one you want me to pick in the middle. This is what Cialdini says, like behavioral economics, sort of put it in the middle. Keep it short, so I can very quickly read through it, and below that put a paragraph as to why you think this is the right option. And underneath that, so a short paragraph, and underneath that you put, what are the consequences of inactivity on my side? So if I don't make a decision, what are you going to do? A lovely thing to sneak in there is go, if I don't hear from you by Thursday, right, I will go ahead with the middle option. Which means the project continues and you don't have to worry about it. And they say, yeah, but I didn't give you permission to do that. Yes, you did, because I asked you and you didn't respond. Okay? And so in the Netherlands, it's always about the outcome. And if something's going to hamper the outcome, it needs to be a bloody good reason. And any good reason is, I'm ill, I've got an ill child, I've had a death in the family. Those are all good reasons. I'm in hospital, my dad's in hospital, my wife's in hospital, my children's in hospital, my cousin is in hospital. It doesn't matter. Anything that has to do with family, anything that has to do with really severe emotional consequences, you go to your manager and say that. The worst for me was I was working with a team in India, and you guys know KPN, the telecom company. We're working with the call centers, and we had a rollout, and the rollout was supposed to happen on the Monday, and everybody was working through the whole weekend because I was putting pressure on everybody. We're going to work through this. And then on Monday morning, I hear that the lead software developer in India was in hospital. And I went like, why hasn't anybody told me this? And he wasn't in hospital for himself. He was there in hospital because his dad was dying. I'm kind of like, if you told me this, I could have gotten back to everybody in the project. It probably would cost us 50 to 80,000 euros to postpone that, but every single person in that whole project team on the KPN side, all the way to the board, would have been happy to postpone it if somebody is dealing with death. Because in the Netherlands, we may seem callous and cold because we tell you things, but that is not the case. People with really warm hearts, really compassionate, really caring, it just looks like they're not. Because we're so densely packed in the country, we need to make sure that when we let somebody in, they're allowed to stay there. And so if you're going to be here for 6 months or a year, it's going to be much more difficult to make friends. The moment you know you're going to be settling here, it becomes easier. I'm really enjoying settling here. So what are you going to be doing about that? I would like to get more involved in the community. Do that. In work, do that. Get involved. So, at work, what we try and use is our executive functions. And the executive functions in the mind are those things that help us to plan, to prioritize, to be creative, to deal with all kinds of trouble around us, to not be so easily triggered by our environment. And the moment our stress levels goes up, our executive functions go down, and we start becoming much more snappy, much more reactive. And if we want to be able to function well at work, we need to bring the stress levels down. And to do that, we ask, how are you doing today? What can I help you with? How can we solve this problem? And show people you've listened, because then they will also tend to listen to you. Okay. So keep the temperature down. How are we doing for time? Okay. So how many minutes have we got still to? 14. Okay, great. That means we have lots of questions. So what I want to do from you is we've shared a few things with you now, And I would like to know from your side, what have you run into? Is there something I can help you with today? Is there something that we can maybe brainstorm together to solve for you? Or is there something you're like, I don't want to hear about this anymore, you know? All good. Okay, so put up your hand if you've got a question for us. I'm going to point at people. All right. Leeuwarden. Pass it on to him. My condolences. Okay. Okay, the question is, I'm from the US, I come to the Netherlands, I need to pitch or sell myself in a business environment, either interview or sell a business idea. How do I do that? Now, the first thing you're going to do is you're going to look up a guy called David Beckett, all right? Because he does pitch training and he's got some really interesting videos on YouTube that can help you first step along the way. And the process is kick-ass opening, 3 things close, all right? Sort of that's the structure. In the Netherlands, however, we don't brag. And that's the thing that we do, that the Americans tend to do a lot. Part of the whole CV writing process and how to apply for jobs is about making things look as shiny and as beautiful as possible. In the Netherlands, we want you to be a little bit human. What did I learn from my mistakes? How have I reflected on that and what have I learned from that? Why am I going to be a person that's going to work well with your team? How am I going to connect? You're a foreigner. So you're a foreigner, you're already a risk for most people because it's case if, as a foreigner, we don't know if you're going to click with the team and everything cultural is going to be a problem. So, you know, which it usually isn't the case, but people have these ideas, these preconceived ideas. So we need to break through that. So some of the things you would do is the what and the how questions. Get it sort of suss things out. And whenever anybody asks you a question or challenges anything, again, reflect, sort of refer or fall back into the what and the how questions. When it comes to pitching ideas, it's also about the outcome. It's not about the process. So I spoke to some of you today and I went, it's not about, oh, yeah, I did this job and then I did that job and I worked with this many people and I don't care, all right? You're interviewing for this job here, right now. What are you going to offer the company or how are you going to make this work? What in your experience will show you how to work? And then I'm going to ask you, what if that doesn't work? Because I want to see if you can think off your feet. I want to see if you can be able to relate to something else you've learned in the past and be able to use that instead. Or that I can get an idea as to how you will go about figuring it out. And somewhere in there, you can also say, and if I don't know, I'm going to go to my manager and ask. All right? Because that's what we do. Is that an answer to your question? So Alex, was another question over here. Was another question, lady over here somewhere? Yes.
Just share an example from your work experience that you use the we or the my framework.
Okay. Can you give us an example of how to use the we and the how framework? Or the mice. This is going to sound really maybe sexist, so I need to preamble this, okay? I'm as gay as the day is long, all right? Married happily for the last 23 years to my husband, so if a girl looks at me flirtatiously, my usual response is, wrong tree, darling, okay? So I was sitting in the situation where one of my sales guys were talking to a purchasing person at a company, and we were negotiating a few million euros with a deal, and she was stunningly beautiful, okay? He couldn't help himself. He was giving discount after discount after discount, and we were sort of like, we're at minus 12%, and I went like, buddy, this is never gonna fly, you know? And he goes like, yeah, but she keeps on sending the deal back. Okay, so have you asked her why? Because no. She just says, it's not good enough. And I go like, okay. So So I'm saying, you're not going to talk to her at all anymore. I'm stopping you from talking to her. You're not allowed to do that. No one in the company is allowed to do that. You tell her, I'll talk to her, and I'll call her later in the week. Now, this deal had to be closed by the end of the week. So you can imagine there's going to be a lot of stress. So for 2 days, I didn't talk to this person. She kept on phoning everybody in the company except me. And on day 2, she called me. So now we're already on the right track. I had to sit down with her and then started asking what and how questions. What we figured out is what she needed was for us to give her an uptime warranty, which my company has a policy we never do. So how are we going to solve this? We have a complete area of non-agreement. So eventually I went back to my supplier and said, you provide us the platform in which we do this. If it goes down, my client wants an uptime warranty. They say, yeah, we can give you 99.9. What I put in the contract, 99.6. Anything beyond that, my supplier was going to take the cost. So I could find a way to work through the company policies by understanding what she needed. And then I started asking, but what is behind this? And she was being threatened by her boss that if this deal was not closed by the end of the week, she might lose her job. Right. And by figuring that out, I knew there was a lot more pressure on her and we could find some form of similarity or some way of doing things. So an example of what this is we also call it the dovetailing or the orange problem. So let's say I've got an orange here in my hand and I give you the orange and I say, please divide this fairly between us. How would you divide it? Yes. Most people will say, cut it in half, you get one half, I get the other half. That's fair. But is it fair to me? And she said, which half do I want? Or what do I want? And in that case, what do I want is the right question. How will be the process in how we will divide it? How? We can decide how we negotiate. What tells you what my needs are. And once you figure out my interests, which is slightly less than needs, when you figure out my interests, we can brainstorm a solution together. So my answer to you is, I want the skin because I want to bake a cake. Now, if you want the juice, we can run it through a juicer. I can still get the skin. We can take the pulp on the inside. We can turn that into compost. And we can take the seeds and turn that into a new orchard. So all of a sudden, we've got 4 business ideas out of 1 orange. And that's when we are open to the what's and the hows and finding the solutions behind that. And you will see that in the Netherlands, that's how things work. If you go to Germany, it's going to be, here's the process, and everybody walks through the process, because we want a consistent outcome, even if it's bad, but we want a consistent outcome. In the Netherlands, people say, I don't care how you get there, that's where you need to be, and that's what I want from it. And then you go like, but I don't know how to get there, and you go like, okay, what can I give you to help you to get there? You just need to be open to learn. Okay, does that answer your question? Okay. Another question there back.
So I was wondering what to say in an interview when we are introducing ourselves, because I generally get lost in talking about education or past experience, but maybe in Dutch culture it's also, I don't know, kind of necessary to talk about individual self. I wanted to know about this.
Okay. The question is, I'm in an interview. What do I talk about when they ask me, tell me a little bit about yourself? All right. So we talked about the 3 things earlier for the pitching. So it's important, I believe it's important to go out there and sit down, look at everything that you have done in the past, look at all the places you've been and what you've learned from that, and figure out 3 stories. All right? Best even is if you can go for 6, okay? 3 stories about stuff that went well, and 3 stories about things that went really badly, and what you learned from it and how you grew from it, or how you dealt with it. Within that, they want to know about you as a person. So if somebody asks me, I will go like, they've read my CV, and in my CV it says I'm gay, all right? Instead of like reason for terminating previous employment, discrimination on the basis of sexual orientation. And they go like, does that happen? Of course it happens. I mean, women will tell you that they get discriminated against. Anybody that's from a different culture will tell you they get discriminated against. It happens, all right? But how do I deal with it? And so I put that in my CV so I can have that conversation. So we'll go through the CV. I said, have you read my CV? And if they say yes, and they don't ask a question about this, I know they haven't read it. Okay? Or they don't make a remark. So put something special in your CV and see if they've read through it, because you want people to also pay attention to you. And then the next thing is, whatever's your CV, so your education, I don't care. It's on paper. You already sent it to me. Okay? Do I want to know about your experience in job? Not really. You're going to tell me there I led 200 people. Sure, wonderful. If it's 200 or 20 or 2, it's not that important. Yes, the scale, it gives you a nuance, but who are you? Who are you as a leader, if you want? Who are you as a manager? Who are you as a team player? Who are you as a specialist? I like to call it T-shaped people. The value in a T-shaped person is to your right. This is where I'm junior in time, so I'm over here. When I grow more senior, I go this way. But as a specialist, my knowledge is this way. So the longer the T at the bottom is, the bit more my specialization. The wider the T at the top is, usually the less the specialization, the more generalist you are, but the more you need to be able to talk to people below and above your level. And value is created up, not down. Because if I have a great idea and I can sell that to management, what happens? We have a new product. When we have a new product, a new service, it means we can make more money. And what is the religion in this country? Money. All right? Is that sort of an answer to your question? When it comes to storytelling techniques and things like that, there's some stuff that I do with that. You can contact me afterwards. I'll just put this up for the people that want to. You can connect with me on LinkedIn there. Grab that. Otherwise, you can come up and grab a bookmark with my little LinkedIn code on that. But if you think about how you're going to tell the story of you, make sure that you tie it into something that happened, what you've learned from it, and what you can help other people achieve. All right. Or how you will help the organization. Okay. Any last questions? You know me, you can ask me later. And this is good for the group.
Just with reference to what we talked about earlier,
Yeah?
with opinions and how everyone is entitled to opinions, people have a right to their opinions, especially. What do you do when, because the way I come at it is that I'm a very direct person by nature, but I kind of, being over here, I've got a kind of, what I've learned being here anyway, in terms of culture, is that directness is kind of functions on a spectrum over here. So I was quite curious how you manage that. How do you know you're really direct and then you kind of have to step back your directness?
You can be as direct as you want to be, as long as it's about stuff. All right? Problem with the project, problem with the finances. The moment I tell you, you are a horrible person, okay, that's the kind of directness nobody appreciates, any country. Okay. So we have to be careful to separate the what from the whom. So as long as we talk about the what, it should be okay. The moment it becomes the person, that's the place you have to be careful. And then the higher up you get in the organization, the more politically astute they become. So, for example, if you want, now, these are horrible things as well, but if you want to influence a project, there's usually two things you need to do. Either you need to find allies, or if you want to sink it, you need to create doubt. Right. So be aware that that may come across your road, that people may ask questions that could be to sink a project that you might be leading. And what will they do is they will create doubt by saying, have you thought about? Okay? So usually not the what and the how questions, but other versions thereof. So one of the tricks in program management is called shaking the Christmas tree. And or kerstboom schudden. And that means if you're the program manager and you've got a lot of project managers working for you, what you do is to make sure they've thought about a lot of stuff, you start asking questions that's going to rattle them a little bit. And when you rattle them, they may say the wrong thing, and you go like, okay, this person hasn't thought about this. Right. So just be aware that directness is good, especially if you know you're on solid ground. If you're not, you may get a question that's going to show you're not. All right. So as long as you're either convinced of your opinion or you have the facts to back it up, come on with it. Bring it on. All right. Yes. They told me 5 minutes, but I'm the last speaker, so I'm sure they'll kick us out at some point.
You said you should be direct about things and not people. Does that include opinions? Because in a lot of cultures, your opinions is part of you. Maybe in the Dutch culture, opinions is stuff.
Opinions, the question is opinions about you or is opinions just about stuff in the Netherlands? No, an opinion is, I can have an opinion of you. But it's considered rude to call you an ass in public. All right? If I tell you that in person, different story. So usually we tend to praise in public and condemn or criticize in private. And generally when you speak to a Dutch person, say, what you did there affected me, instead of saying, you're a bad person because you did it. So one of the things we need to also figure out is, how do we separate not just the what from the whom, but the intent versus the impact? The impact you can talk about, till the cows come home, it's no problem, right? But the intent, we cannot ascribe to someone just because we think they wanted to hurt us because we're hurting. And when we come from other cultures, it's very quick to jump on that bandwagon. We go like, you said something that hurt me, so you must have intended to hurt me, so you're a bad person. Because the Dutch is direct, or are direct, it sometimes doesn't translate that well, because they will tell you something, impact is negative on you, and you jump on that and you wanted to hurt me because you weren't putting it in a way that couldn't have hurt me. And we see that now with Gen Zs, it's even worse. Because during COVID especially, there was not a lot of interpersonal interaction. And because that interpersonal interaction was sort of like limited, people didn't learn that sometimes I need to pull back and I need to read the body language of other people. And we see there's a bit of a gap there. Gen Zs on general score on average lower than millennials or Gen Xs. We also see that some of the newer generation sort of people where they go no mobile phones or no social media before 10 or 12, we tend to see that those kids are scoring better again. Okay, so we also need to understand that not everybody can see that we're upset, and so when we ask questions, we can figure that out. Does that help? Okay. Any other questions? Yes. Mm-hmm.
So what company or what manager are looking for when a person just enter into the career, like what they are looking for in the progression period?
Okay, the question is, what do people look for? You're starting off your new job. So there's two sides to that question. The one is to get the job, and the other one is to retain the job in the probation period, you said. The second one. Okay. The only thing a manager really wants from you is that you're going to be able to do the job consistently and they don't have to worry about it. And that means every time I give you something to do and you can deliver consistently, you're my golden child. Absolutely. Especially if you give me what I want. So the first thing we need to do, and I think from an Asian culture it's going to be much more difficult, is to ask the question. To figure out, what do you want? All right? And ask that in a relatively polite way, but say, how can I make sure this meets your requirements? What would those requirements be? How can I ensure that I can get the best work to you? What will be the criteria that you would evaluate this on? Get that on the table. And if there's one or two things that you don't know how to do, say, I know how to do these things, but this is the thing that I'm struggling with. Do you have somebody that can help me with that? Don't ask the manager to help you, ask them if they have someone to help you. Mm-hmm.
So, like, do you mean, like, I need to ask as many questions as possible because it would be also hard to evaluate a person in advance, right?
How long is your contract?
So the first contract is for 1 year, so the probation.
1 year, they already like you. If they wouldn't have given you a year if they didn't like you. If they were really worried, they would have given you 6 months. All right? So the 1 month probation is just basically, is there a potential risk? Right? So if you show risky behavior in that first month, it's always just in the contract just to say, oof, we just figured out that you actually murdered somebody in your previous company, we need to get rid of you as quickly as possible. Well, I've just been told that I absolutely have to stop now, okay? Because they need to clear the space here as well. So I'm going to switch off, but I will be standing over here and answering questions or talk to you if you want to, and I'll hand out some bookmarks if you want to get in contact with me. All right. Thank you for coming today, and I appreciate you having been here.